In this video, I'm going to show how to create a vector that contains more than one element and concepts related to that. But why learn about vectors in the first place? The reason is, in most real world data, such as the sales data, weather data, or any other data that you could think of, the data points do not occur individually. All of them are related to each other, and therefore the need is there to store them in one single object itself. A quick recap: we are in the middle of the case study of the online pizza company where you want to analyze two of these goals. One is to study the impact of revenue increase by adding an extra shift, and the second is to recommend an online advertising strategy. We saw how to create one day's worth of data previously. Now in this one, we will see how to create 1 week worth of data. Let's go to the R console. Let's begin by creating some vectors. I want to create the date, weekday, sales and the discount data for 1 week. Let's start with date 7. This represents the dates for the first 7 days of the month. To create this vector, use the C function. C stands for combine and place all the values that you want this vector to hold inside it. Let's run this. Now date 7 contains the values 1 to 7. And since all these values are consecutive, there is a shorter way to create the same vector using a smaller notation, that is 1:7. This also will give the same result. Now if you check the class of date 7, it is an integer. Likewise, you can use the same C function, and by placing the characters from Sunday to Saturday, we will have the weekdays. Now the class of weekday 7 is character. That is because just by placing the quotations around each of these values, R understood that this should be a character vector. Let's create sales the same way. Since I had passed dot zero behind couple of these numbers, I would expect the class of sales 7 to be numeric. Numeric is the float equivalent of the R programming language. Likewise, let's create discount also. This is also numeric because we have 0.5 in between. Good. Now we have the date 7 vector. We also have the weekday 7 vector. Date 7 vector contains the dates. Weekday 7 contains the days of the week. Now it is possible to assign names to each of the items in any given vector. Now I want to assign the names Sunday, Monday, Tuesday and so on to the items present in date 7. To do that, use the names function and make the assignment. Let me run this code. Now if you look at date 7, you see the days of the week written above each of these items, and this is coming from the weekday 7 vector. Now to access any of these items present in day 7, you can access it using the respective name. For example, if I want to access number 2, this is corresponding to the name MON. So place MON within quotations inside a pair of square brackets corresponding to date 7. By doing this, you will get the value 2 corresponding to the name MON. Now, what if you want to get the values corresponding to two different names? Typical and intuitive thing for people to do is to write all the names that you want to get the values for inside the square brackets. That is correct in a sense, but if you think about it, vector is a one-dimensional object. What I mean by one-dimensional object is vector does not have the concept of rows and columns, or it does not have the concept of cubical representation of data. Since there is only one direction in which the vectors can elongate, it is called a one-dimensional object. Now, since this is one-dimensional, the square bracket can take only one argument inside it. So what you need to do is place the names for which you want to get the values for in one single object. That is, make it as a vector and then pass that vector inside date 7. Now you can get both Monday and Tuesday. Had I run this, this would have given us an error because we have passed an incorrect number of dimensions. Now I want to create another vector called date type that states whether the given date is a weekend or a weekday. Wn for weekend and wy for weekday. Since these values are placed inside quotes, the class of this can be a character. Now, if you look at this, this is actually a categorical type of a variable where you have only two different possible values. Now, to represent categorical data, R has an inherent data type called factor variable, factor vector to be precise. To make date type as a factor, use the factor function and it will automatically convert into a factor vector. Let me run this. Now, if you see the class, it is a factor. And if you look at the value of date type 7, there is one additional line called levels. And whenever you see this additional levels line, you can understand that it is a factor variable. These are the two levels. Level 1 is Wn and level 2 is Wy. Internally, these levels are coded as the numbers 1 and 2 internally by R. Now, how to access particular elements? Previously, we saw how to access using the name itself. Date 7 and place the name inside the square brackets, you will get the value. Another way to access the value inside a vector is using the index notation. Instead of giving it the name, pass the location, index location of that object that you want to get inside the square brackets and it will give out the value. The value in position 1 is Sunday. Now, if you want to get the first three items, remember, since vector is a one-dimensional object, you need to combine 1, 2, and 3 in a vector and then pass that vector. So we have Sunday, Monday, and Tuesday. Alternately, since all these are consecutive values, you can pass in 1:3. And if you want the first and the third value alone, you need to again go back to the C notation and pass it inside the square brackets. Now let's see a third concept, how to create a blank vector. What I mean by blank vector is in R, you can reserve space for an object before you even assign values inside it. What I mean by that is when you run this particular line of code, character 10, what it does is it creates a character vector of length 10 and all of the values inside it are blanks. It's not blank space, it's just blanks. If you check the class of charvec, it is a character. And the object size, let's keep a tab, it is 232 bytes. Like character vector, there is a numeric blank also. You can create it using numeric 10, that will be of length 10. And if you look at the class, it is numeric and object size is 176 bytes. Let's keep a tab of this. If you notice, the space occupied by this particular numeric vector is significantly less than the character vector. What this tells us is it requires lesser space to store a number than a character, lesser memory space. Likewise, you can also create an integer vector. The integer vector occupies 96 bytes. Now, we have previously seen how to create an integer vector explicitly. The syntax is, now if you directly assign a value to a variable, it will come out as a numeric. To explicitly store it as a integer, you need to add an L beside the number and it will be stored as an integer. Likewise, let's check how to create a logical blank vector. You can do it using the logical function. The class is logical, object size is 96, which is same as what we observed for int_vec. And if you look at the content of logic_vec, all of them are initialized to false by default. Now we have seen how to create a vector from scratch, but what if you want to create a new vector from an existing vector? Right now we have an existing vector in the form of weekday 7 and day type 7. Is it possible to combine these two vectors to create a new vector, especially when weekday 7 is of character type and day type 7 is of factor type? What happens when you try to combine two vectors of different types. When you try to do that, R will try to find a data type that can accommodate both of these two types. By default, the character data type can accommodate numeric, logical factors as well as character. So by default, if there is any conflict, R will try to store the resultant vector as a character vector. Likewise, let's try for weekday 7 and discount 7. You see that the numbers that originally were in discount 7 are converted to characters and stored in one single vector. Likewise, in date type 7, there are two steps there. In date type 7, it is actually factors. The factors was converted to numbers corresponding to levels of these factors, and those numbers got converted to a character. Hope that was clear. Now let's do a mini challenge. The challenge for this video is to create a vector that contains numbers from 1 to 26. Assign the names of vectors as alphabets from A to Z. Then extract the positions of the vowels A, E, I, O and U. Give it a shot in your RStudio. I will show you the answers in a few seconds. So here's the answers. MyVec contains 1 to 26. R has an inbuilt variable called letters. By default, it contains the alphabets from A to Z in lowercase. I'm assigning this as the names of MyVec. Congratulations if you got it right. We have seen a variety of things related to working with vectors in this one. Let's continue the discussion with a new topic in the next.